play around with frets. We're going to look for something in a book called The Amateur's Mind, Turning Chess Misconceptions into Chess Mastery by International Master Jeremy Silman. I do not particularly like to have music playing while I'm doing a chess stream. My setup is not the way it should be. However, I'm going to do the best I can to try to get everything on my computer screen. So I loaded up an old database, I don't know, year 2000 or something. It's not current, doesn't matter. So my stream opening talks about tactics, strategy, think like a master, that sort of thing. Beginning players are taught, okay, if I take this piece, he takes that piece, I take that piece, I win a piece. While it's okay to learn that methodology will not get you thinking like a master. It takes you longer to think that way than it would be if you just counted the number of pieces on a square or on another piece. If the same number of pieces are guarding a pawn or a piece, then the exchange can't happen because you don't win. Now, damn it. I don't play that much anymore, and I can't even remember the rule half the time myself. What I want to do let me see if I can do this. There is a bunch of stuff here. So I have positions set up. Maybe I can do it this way, and I will get onto my stream here. And I will see if I can add it's a little bit larger. this is really what I want to get into. I don't know if I can just minimize. Can I? I can't. Shit. Alright, I'm going to cancel out of this. Move this over here. No, I don't want new game. Position setup. Alright. Let's see. So the whole idea behind this. Alright, let's say that we'll put, let's put a black pawn on the, oops. Always click black pawn. I haven't done this for a long time. Let's grab a black knight and put it there. A black bishop and put it there. Let's grab a white pawn and put it here. A white knight and a white bishop. Now let's also say that the pawn can't move because it would put the king in check or something. Or we could say, let's say that it's white's move. And let's put a pawn here. Now, at this point, you're asking yourself, as white, can I take that black pawn? So if I go knight takes, bishop takes, what does that leave me? Where am I thinking, you know? Knight takes, bishop takes. So in the end, black has a bishop on the board, and white has lost a bishop. It's white's move. If you think in that term, it takes you longer to figure out whether or not you can win the piece. If you look at it and say, I have two pieces attacking, black has the same number of pieces defending, then you cannot take the pawn or the piece because you will lose a pawn or a piece. Now, let's say it's white's move, and black cannot further defend that pawn. He's got to do something else. Let's say that white moves the pawn from here up to here. Now, there's 3 attackers and 2 defenders. As it happens, black would have to take the pawn, because otherwise, if he doesn't do so, he will lose not only the pawn, but he will also lose the square. Now, that's more advanced because that's part of thinking like a master tactics, which I'm not getting into just yet. I just want to get new players thinking so many pieces attacking a piece, so many pieces defending, and if the number is the same, then can you put more pressure on that piece? Can you say put a queen on there, or can you attack it with a pawn? Or let's say that pawn wasn't there. Oops. Let's say we've got a black pawn here. bishop, knight, bishop. Let's say there, and then there's a white pawn here. Let's say that white can move his queen from, say, the E1 square up to the G3 square, and he's now attacking it with 3 pieces. Whereas before, if white was attacking with the pawn, even though there's 3 pieces attacking that pawn, black can get out of the situation by taking the pawn, because white's offered the exchange. So why not take it? If he's going to lose it, then he might as well get something for that loss. And then, in the end, there's still only 2 pieces defending. There's still 2 pieces defending that square that the black pawn was on, and 2 pieces for white that is attacking that square. So white cannot take control of the square. If white were to, say, put a queen here, then now white can not only take the piece, take the pawn, but white gains control of the square, with the queen ending up being the last piece on that square. Now you've got another situation where, let's say you've got, how do I get rid of that? I can actually move, I can actually move that? Oh, I can take it off the board, okay. Let's say black has, let's get rid of the queen. Let's say now black's got 2 defending, white's 2 attacking. But now black is defending with a rook, which is considered a major piece, as material-wise it's worth 5 points. And you know, there's something else that I'm not able to do here. But anyway, doesn't matter. Actually, no, it does matter. Wait just a second. Bear with me, because I want to try something here. I just need to move this here and move this back up here. All right, let's do this again. All right, let's say we've got a black pawn, black rook, black bishop, white knight, white bishop. So black's defending with 2 pieces, one of them which is a major piece, and so on. So can white take the pawn now if it's white's move? And that's a nice try, but I'm sorry, you can do anything with your language there, and it will not get posted because I'm just that good. And I don't know if I can go over here and actually, I'm just gonna, it doesn't matter anyway. So let's say white takes with a knight, black takes back with a bishop, white takes with a bishop, and rook takes. Using that methodology, black still wins piece. So again, 2 defending, 2 attacking, you cannot attack. If, let's say, white has a queen, now it's 3 attacking, 2 defending. So it doesn't matter. If it's a minor piece or a major piece, black is still going to lose that pawn. In the end, let's say that black can't do anything. So what we've talked about here is a tactic. We've put pressure on a piece or a pawn. In order, we put more pieces on that because we want to take that pawn. That's a tactic. Well, actually, it's a tactic and a strategy. The strategy is Okay, the idea is that there's a pawn out here. Maybe we can take it if we pile up enough pieces on it. Maybe we can grab that pawn. That's the strategy. The tactics is how we do it. You set up your pieces, and you set up your pieces however you can do it to attack that pawn. So now white has 3 pieces on the pawn. Let's say black can't do anything with the situation. He can't take with the pawn, he can't take anything, he can't do anything. So he makes some other obscure move that maybe it's a counterattack or something. Black could try to counterattack, like maybe attack another pawn somewhere with another rook or that sort of thing. That's another strategy called counterattack. Let's just say hypothetically that black doesn't have any of those options. And it's white's move and goes ahead, and let's say he takes the pawn with the bishop. Let's say black's best alternative is not to capture the piece, because if, in thinking like a master, if you take all the pieces and the pawns off of the board, you are making the game simpler. And if the game is simpler for white with one pawn, that one pawn could theoretically have a chance to go to the end of the board and become a queen. All things being equal, as they say. And my cable is wanting to talk to me here. So there are things called strategies, which is like the overall picture of how do I accomplish a certain plan. Like, do I have a plan? Maybe my plan is to take a pawn. How do I get my pieces to that pawn? So I developed the tactics to do that, to go after that pawn. And a basic tactic is simply just to attack the piece or the pawn, just like I'm attacking my snacks here. Let's see. Let's put the bishop back here. Put the pawn here. Let's say there's a king there. And a black bishop here. Let's take the queen off the board. And look at the position again. So now we have 2 pieces attacking the pawn and 2 pieces defending the pawn. The question is, now, because the knight is actually pinned, that's a check there on that diagonal with this black bishop aiming down at the king through the knight here. So does white really have 2 pieces attacking that pawn? If you think like a master, the answer is no. There's only 1 piece attacking the pawn, because the knight is pinned. If you think, well, it's possible you could also think like a master and say to yourself, yes, I have 2 pieces attacking that pawn if I can get my king out of the way. It's white's move. So in thinking in terms of the strategy and the goal, and you've done all this work to accomplish one mission, and that mission is to set out to take that isolated pawn that's out there all by itself. So white just keeps going and moves his king, but it's black to move. So theoretically, black could have another rook, and he could just put it in behind. And now, well, actually, no. Wait just a second. We don't even need that rook there. Black could just develop another piece or move another pawn someplace. because black is still adequately defending the pawn with 2 pieces. So now you could pile up more pieces on this pawn. Let's say. Let's do a white rook here. Let's put another black rook here. Now it's getting a little bit more complicated. And we'll leave the king where it is. Let's say it's white to move. Okay, so now if you think in terms of, okay, knight takes, bishop takes, rook takes, queen takes, rook takes, whatever, you know? You can see how this gets confusing. So now if you look at the number of defenders and the number of attackers, all of a sudden it becomes very clear very quickly. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 defending, 1, 2, 3 attacking. Actually, you don't even need the rook. So now you look at it. There's 1, 2, 3 defending, 1, 2, 3 attacking. So you know you're safe. Well, actually, no. There's 4. There's a white rook over here. So I have to put the rook over back here. So again, you get 2 rooks, a bishop, and a queen. That's 4 pieces per, defending, and a knight and a bishop for white, and a rook and a queen attacking. So you get 4 pieces attacking, 4 pieces defending. So you cannot attack the pawn. Now, what if, let's say, for example, what if, let's see, let's put this rook here, and we'll put a black king here, and a white bishop here. Let's say that we've got, we've got something like that. So now you can see you've got another question. Do you have the same number of pieces defending as attacking? Can you win the pawn? Now, if you look at this particular position, white cannot move the first rook, so that means white cannot defend with the first rook or the rook in behind. So it looks like black is only defending with 2 pieces. So it just seems to me that depending on how you look at the board, if you look at the number of defenders and the number of attackers, you can tell a lot quicker whether or not you can take that pawn. So I know I can take the pawn now because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces attacking. Black only has 2 pieces defending because he can't move that rook. I don't even know why I managed to get into that particular discussion. It's talking about defending and attacking a piece. So it's a tactic in the tactics are the attacking and defending, and the strategy is, can you take the pawn or not? So while you're thinking about it, you can grab your snacks behind the over-the-board chess game and make all kinds of noise to distract your chess player, or do weird things with your hair to distract your over-the-board chess player. You can see the expressions on that person's face, their body movements. Like, are they twitching in the chair? Are they kind of thinking about, are they scratching their eyes? Or are they moving a little bit more? Are they even sweating? Are they profusely sweating, Over-the-board chess players, some of them, are so into this game that they are literally out for blood. I mean, They want to wreck your day. Now, I used to play like that, but only from a defensive point of view. So that's why I got out of chess, because number one, there are a lot of good chess players. Number two, there's like different plateaus of learning. Um, you can learn the basics, and we're going to go over some of the basics and the tactics and the strategies. I'm going to go over that tonight. Real easy to do. Then you get into parts of the game. You've got the end game, the middle game, and the opening. Opening leads to the middle game. Middle game leads to the end game. A middle game would be most of your pieces and pawns are still on the board. They're moved in a certain position strategically to accomplish some kind of plan. Now, most chess players will play their game and they will not have a plan. Then what they're doing is they're playing on their opponent's weakness. Now, this is a strategy. If your opponent makes a mistake and you see it, all of a sudden, when you started the game, you had no strategy, you had no plan, but you recognize your opponent made a mistake. And I'm not talking about a blunder here. I'm talking about something simple as moving a piece off of a guarded pawn or something like that. 9 times out of 10, the opponent loses a pawn. That's the majority of the middle level players. The beginning players will flat out lose a piece. They'll blunder a piece on the board. They'll leave it hanging, or it'll be pinned and they can't do anything. Good tactics and strategies will allow you to look at positions and say, like, you can look at a position 4 or 5 moves ahead and say, okay, if this person does this, I can move these pieces 4 or 5 moves ahead and guarantee that I'm going to have the position that I want when I get done and win the game. Now, grandmasters can think this way, and Bobby Fischer proved that that kind of thinking was not the best way of becoming a grandmaster in chess. Well, it's not. No, I won't say it's not the best way. I'll say it's not the only way. What he did was he came up with moves that made absolutely no sense whatsoever. And in fact, they didn't make any sense. His moves were based on throwing your opponent off, making your opponent think of that the person that you're playing has come up with some interesting plan. My bird is jabbering. Shut up. Let's say you move your outside board pawn. And Bobby Fischer was known to do this. He would play an outside pawn up 1 or 2 squares, and his opponent would sit there for a half an hour trying to figure out why he did this. And in the end, his opponent either won or lost, which doesn't really make much difference. What matters is that he made his opponent think about something for a half an hour. Because these are grandmasters playing each other. I think there was a Boris Spassky Fischer game. Anyway, so if you can make a move and your opponent doesn't quite understand why you made the move, your opponent may sit there for a good half an hour or more trying to figure out why you made that move. And that will throw his game off completely. And then 4 or 5 moves down the road, he'll make a mistake because he was thinking about what that other move was that you did that made no sense. Now, you could make a move like that if you thought you were losing the position in the game or something. If, let's say you had a certain plan and all of a sudden it's not going to work. So you throw some weird move out there that makes absolutely no sense, and then hoping that your opponent will start to come up with a plan, and then you will be able to see what your opponent's plan is because you don't have one. So what you're basically doing is you're trying to figure out what your opponent's plan is, if he has one. And 9 times out of 10, better players are going to have some kind of a plan and you're not. Let me see if I can elaborate on that a little more. Let's say it's white to move, and this is the end game. This is called the end game position. And in learning chess, there are some basic things that you need to know. Number 1, you need to know how to checkmate your opponent's king. Number 2, you need to know about stalemate. You need to know basic things such as pins, forks, skewers, and I'll go through some of that stuff. And anyway, so what's going on here? So what's going on is that White's plan and strategy is to move the pawn to the end of the board and get a queen and then eventually checkmate the king. Now, the tactics involved in doing that are necessary in order for the plan to work. If I just take my king and walk it down to the diagonal and try to move my pawn ahead, it's not going to work because the black king's just going to take the white pawn off the board. So that tactic's not going to work. I'm not going to talk about endgame tactics. I'm going to just show you the idea of what a tactic is and basically kind of go over that in the simple positions. So it's white to move, and what white does in this particular position is do what's called opposing the opponent's king. And a way to do that is to have the white king directly across. Now, the king cannot move, the black king can't move into any square that's surrounded by the white king. That's an illegal move. So black has to either move to the right or to the left. It doesn't matter which position black moves to. Let's say that black moves here. Now, if white pushes the pawn, now black can come over and regain the opposition, because then it's white's move, and black could attempt to force a draw. So what white does is actually diagonally oppose. So white will move his king over here, and now you've got these three boxes in front of the white king that the black king cannot touch. So the black king's going to try to crawl up the board and see if he can grab the pawn real quick. And as you see, he can't make progress, because now the white square in front of the pawn is protected by the king, and the black square in front of the pawn is protected by the pawn. So there's no way that the black king can take the pawn. The white pawn will eventually go to the end of the board and get a queen. So the tactic that was involved is called opposing opposition. It's called direct opposition. Now you can also do what's called diagonal opposition, which is going here. Now you're diagonally, because you moved into that square, you have diagonally opposed your opponent's king. So even if the black king goes back, the white king can reoppose and then go back to that original square and win the game. Those are endgame. Those are tactics for endgame. Let's say that the king is here. Let's say that the pawn is here. We'll say white has a rook. And let's say black has a rook. And let's say that the black king is here. Oops. So it's white's move. Now, white could attack on h5 and put the king in check, but there's a better move. The better move is what's called, I think it's called a skewer. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's what it's called. So white will move his rook over here, put the black king in check. When the check moves out of the way, the black rook that's in behind gets captured. I believe that's called the skewer. And there are endgame positions. There are rook endgame positions where white can force black into certain positions where the black rook is won. I don't recall those positions. That gets more into the upper levels of gameplay, and that's not what we're trying to accomplish here. Let's say we've got a black king, a black knight, and we'll just put the white king on the board. And let's say we've got a bishop here, let's say. And just for the sake of argument, we'll say there's pawns on either side of the board. And it's white to move. So we're not going to look. Well, we could look at something. We could look at something here. Let's say that white moves the bishop. Now, let's say that white has a plan to clear the pieces off the board so that white can advance his pawn to the end of the thing and win. Now what you do is you imagine an imaginary set of squares where the king is located and where the advanced pawn is. So if the black king was on this white square over here, I could grab this. If the black king was over here and the white pawn was here, let's see. So here, 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 and here. So here's another tactic. So we were talking about defenders on a piece and attackers on a piece, rather than saying to yourself, okay, if I take, he takes, I take, he takes, blah, 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 blah. Doesn't work. You don't want to think that way. You want to think like a master. Think defender, number of defenders, number of attackers. Here's a situation where you have to think number of moves. Now, instead of counting the moves, what you do is you learn patterns. You learn a pattern and say, if this pattern exists, can I win or not? So let's say hypothetically that, actually I could just even put another king on the board, and we'll put another pawn right here. And we're looking at this white pawn advancing, and the black king is here. It's white's turn to move. So if white moves the pawn, and black moves the king, and white moves the pawn, gets a queen, and black takes the pawn. So, but you don't want to think like that. You want to think literally out of the box. Let's say if it's white to move, and if you look at this king, you'll see an imaginary set of squares. It's a 3 by 3 set of squares right here. If your opponent's king is inside that square, the pawn cannot advance to the end and win a queen. So I could take this king off the board, put this pawn here. No, I could put, if I put the pawn here now, the king is not inside the square. It's called inside the square because this is a larger square. It's a 3 by 3 square. So let's say moves, queen. Now the queen is protecting all these squares, and the king can't get over there. Let's put the pawn back here, let's say. So now if you count, okay, I move, he moves, I move, he moves, blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, that's confusing. So what you want to think of is you want to look at the pattern and say, okay, the king is inside this box, and the pawn is also inside this box. That means if the king is inside the box, in this case it's a 4 by 4, and the pawn is already inside the 4 by 4 and makes a move, then the king can get over in time and prevent the pawn from queening. Let's see. And there you have it. Just like that. So let's say the black king was over here, and let's say the white pawn's here. Well, now you've got a problem because the knight's in the way. So is it going to work? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You don't know. If you count boxes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So here's the square. Okay, you can see the square where the pawn is moving. The big square is right here. So that means the pawn can get to that square and win. So that's a strategy. The tactic is, can I get to the end and win? The strategy is looking at this bigger picture and seeing this larger hidden invisible square. That is another tactic and strategy. So let's take this off. Let's put the king back here. Put this bishop here. All right, let's say it's white to move. And so now you know if white was to move that bishop, let's say white moves the bishop here. The king is definitely inside the square to catch the pawn. The white king is also inside the square. There's a chance that you could have two queens at the same time, and one of the pawns can get a queen and check at the same time. Now, that's another complicated situation. It's a situation that you have to look at it when it happens in a game. um, we could I could try to simulate that. Let's say that we've got a black pawn here, a white pawn here. Wait a minute. Over here, let's say that the white king, let's say that the kings are outside of the squares. Okay, so here's the square here, as you can see. Let's say that this king's over here. Let's say that this king is here. If it is black to move, moves, 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 moves. If it's white to move, moves, 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 moves. So it doesn't matter. So in this situation right here, if white, even if black moves, either the king or the pawn, white wins. Because white can queen, and after the queen moves, gets access to black's queening square. So what is the tactics and what is the strategy? The strategy is get to the end, make a queen before your opponent. The tactic is it possible? What's going to happen? What's going to happen is that white, even if it's black to move, white can still win, because when white, well, I'll just show you. Okay, so let's say pawn moves, pawn moves, pawn moves, pawn moves, pawn moves, pawn moves. Black gets a black king. White gets a white queen with check. So now the king has to move out of the way, and then white will nab the black queen off the board and win. Now, if white were to move the king, it's not white. Okay, let's say, where is the square? Let's see here. If black moves the king, now the black king is inside the square. The white pawn will not queen. So white can also move his king inside the square. And now, so it moves. So it moves, 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 takes. So you can see that's the imaginary squares working for both of these, and it becomes, does it become a draw? Well, yeah, because the king is inside the square. So if let's say the black king was over here and the white king's over here, so black moves inside the square, white moves inside the square, and now it's a draw. They just attack the pawns with each other's king. So that's another tactic to try to draw the game. Instead of, you would have to know, okay, can I get my pawn to the end of the board? The answer is no, because I can move my king, or either opponent can move their king inside the big square, and now it's going to be a draw. So if your opponent makes a mistake, let's say, and your king is here, you move here, and let's see, you move here. Wait, yeah, you move here. Now you know that white only has 3 moves here, and black's got 4. So as black, you already know you're not going to be able to queen. So you have to maintain your position inside the big square. Moves, 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 queens, and takes. Now it's black to move. No, wait, it's white to move. And now you can see the big square. White is now inside the big square. So the tactic is recognizing the large square. In order for black to win, that king, black has to move in such a way that the king can never get inside the big square in time. That's the whole tactic behind that. So that's an idea of a tactic. Another tactic is to pin a piece against the king, which I was showing earlier. So let's say it's white to move, and so white uses a tactic called a pin, and pins the knight against the king to either win the knight or to do whatever. Maybe add another rook. Let's say let's say that the black queen is on the board or something, and just does some move, and that's not a rook. And then white moves the rook over. Okay, that's another tactic, is doubling up on that piece. And let's say your opponent doesn't notice anything. So now white can take the knight, and black can't take it back because it only has the one defender. Oh, let's see. Let's talk about, for example, I'm going to show you a interesting position that I learned on my own. Let's say that you've got some stuff going on the board over here, and you got your king out, like white's got his king, and black's got a pawn or two, whatever, and he's doing some shit over here and whatever. Oops. Let's say that you're trying to figure out this position on the right-hand side of the board, okay? Now, you don't really know what to do here yet, because this is, let's just say that let's say that there's a position, there's a pattern, and there's a strategy, and there's a tactic. There's tactics involved to figure out who can win. We don't know what those tactics are because we haven't studied this part of the end game. So let's just say that black decides to move his pawns. Let's just say he starts to move his pawns up. So he moves that one. White moves this one. Black moves this one. White moves this one here. This is a strategy that I learned to completely blockade black's movements. Okay? Now, you can use this to your advantage to gain moves. It's much more advanced to be able to do what's called gaining a tempo, or even half a move. For example, let's say, like, white, if black does anything, he's going to lose a pawn or something. But if white can make a move to force black to make a move and lose something, that's to white's advantage. So by setting up this position for white on the king side of the board, you are locking the position, and now black can make a move. And now you can make a move on this side of the board, on the king side, and you don't have to worry about anything that happens over here, and I'm going to prove it to you. So let's just say white moves that pawn. All right, so black's going to try a spearhead attack like this. And white just sits there, okay? So now white takes the diagonal opposition to the king, let's say. And now black says, well, why didn't white do anything? Okay, so I'm going to take this pawn. And now white takes that pawn. And now look what you've got. You've got a blockade. So now, no matter what black does, white can triangulate his position such that when he goes back, he can go back and gain the opposition. But what if black's got this move? Black still has a move up here. So instead of moving there, maybe white moves here. Now black could move here. Try to take that pawn. Shut up, damn bird. So now white can go here to gain the opposition. And black has to move back. Okay, maybe white can go here. I don't remember. I think if you look at this pattern here, after white moves this king here, there's like a 2x3 square, a 2x3 rectangle here. I think this is a certain type of opposition, but I don't remember. If you look at this now, if black moves there to try to oppose, then white can advance his king. And white also has a move back here. So he's got to move in the back. So I don't know. I'm just saying, I'm just throwing this stuff out there because I don't know the whole thing. Even though he's taking the opposition, white can do this. Now, maybe the question would be, can black get down there and attack this pawn and get a queen before white can? So now you got to count moves. Or, it's really, this is where the tactics get really complicated and you start counting moves and you're not thinking like a master because you're not thinking, I've seen this pattern before and I know I can win it. Or you're not thinking about where is your king in relation to the square. There may be other patterns in here where you can count. And then once you've counted that pattern, you recognize the pattern and you know you can win in a future game. Playing against me, this might be a typical position, So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now here for white, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now it depends on whose move it is. All right. Let's see. White moved. So black can get a queen first. And as it happens, that the pawn, wait just a minute now, to avoid that check, white would have to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now white has a queen here and black has a queen here. So it's not quite that difficult to count. That's pretty much what you have to do, and you've got to do this, in a period of maybe 5 or 10 minutes left in the game. So then you're thinking, okay, I have the upper hand because I have the queen. And white's king is sitting on that white square right there. So what am I going to do? I have to try and skewer. I have to try and skewer the king and the queen, if that's possible. Because if I don't, black's king is here, and he will be outside of the box because you've got this pawn that can advance and get another queen. But this, if if white, if black could trade queens or something, I have no idea. But anyway, I wanted to show you the blockade of the diagonal pawns for white. This out of curiosity. Let's see. It's black's turn to move. If if it's white's turn to move, then white's gonna win. I think it's 8. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2. No, wait a minute. Wait a minute. 1. Yeah, moves. Moves. Yeah. So if black moves, black gets the queen with a move. If white moves, white gets the queen with a move. The black king's going to be either here or here. And you certainly don't want to be in check. So the black king would have to move here to the light square to avoid a check. And the white king would have to stay on this pawn to avoid a check here. Let's do it from black's point of view. So we've got 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4. Wait a minute. 4, 5, 5, 6, 6, 7, queen, queen, now I think in a position like this, I think white can win because now white has let me yeah, white can win because he's got the white will have the extra pawn. But it could be a draw. See, now you have this position. I have some books, okay? These books are literally an inch thick, and they talk about rook and pawn endgames. They talk about queen and pawn endgames, bishop and pawn endgames, knight and pawn endgames. These books are literally an inch thick, and they teach you pattern recognition in going over literally hundreds of games. Nobody in their right mind has the time to go over that stuff. And, you have to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Am I such a prodigy that playing this game literally is just going to take over my life? And this is the only thing that I have to do. Maybe it is for some people. It certainly isn't for me. I play 5-minute chess games. Maybe mostly 5 minute with no increment. and because I just want to play and learn my openings and that sort of thing. I don't really care about the game that much anymore. But it can help you learn. It can help you with your memory, learning pattern recognition. Say, oh, I remember something, and then you can win. Or I remember something and your opponent made a mistake. So now, if let's say if I were to want to skewer, I would want to have my queen as close to this king as possible to do the checks. Maybe that's a tactic. I don't know. But I'm thinking like a master here. Okay? I'm thinking like a master, even though I don't know the tactics. So I'm going to give it a try and let's see what happens. So we're going to take the white king. We'll take the white queen. Let's move. Actually, we could move the white queen. If I moved it here, we'd get a block. We may not want that. Let's say if we get a block and then we exchange and the black king is here, then you got to ask yourself again, can I get a queen first? So then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So takes, and then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So yeah, black is not going to be able to get another queen on the board in time. So black cannot afford to exchange. Black has to try and stalemate. Let's go here. So now where can black move? So now look at this. If black black could move. Now here's another thing. What if, let's see, we've got here, then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there might be a possibility of having the same situation again and causing a draw. So you can't trade queens on that square. And if you can't make progress, it's a draw. If you move the king, black could attempt to force a draw by continuously checking. So that would be, what if black went here? Here takes, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wait a minute. Takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Queen. Oh, look where the queen is on that long diagonal. So even if, oh wait, if the black king moved here, and then the black pawn queens, no wait, it's here and then check, and then here, no, over here, and then white can keep checking, but the pawn is sitting on that next to the last square, ready to queen. I don't know if there's a stalemate or if there's a mate. So what happens is the opponent's queen actually acts like a king and opposes the king in order to gain the opposition. That would actually be interesting to watch. That's another tactic, is using your queen as a king to gain the opposition in order to win. Let's say the king moves here. White goes here, check. Here, trades, move, takes, move, guess white does get the queen first. Oh, but wait, we had that situation, didn't we? Now we've got check. Okay, so what we'll do, what you do, you don't want to get next to the, you can't get next to the king. So you have to do what's called like creeping up towards the king. So if I can't go there, I could go here. I could probably do it here, check. And then just keep doing this back and forth. All right, this is a tactic. Now you're checking with opposition. Here. I think this is a draw. Wait. If white just brings the king down here, black keeps advancing until he gets a queen. And the king and queen just stick together like birds of a feather. But anyway, I mean, this is a whole nother topic of conversation. Queen and pawn versus king and that sort of thing. So tactics involve, strategies involve tactics. You know, you got your opponent's king out there. You got a piece out there, and it's white's move. Like you pin the key, you pin the piece, or let's say the knight's back here all by itself, and you do a skewer, and you check. The black king moves, and the black knight goes off the board. It's a skewer. Over here, it's this would be a pin. So the tactic is to move into a position where you're creating some sort of an attack. That's a tactic. Let's see. So it's pins and skewers. There's some other things. There's some other types of tactics, like that pawn structure I showed you. That's a tactic. Oh, what else? Trying to think. I don't know. Oh yeah. Well, with a knight, there's also called forks, but I don't know if, let's say, the king is here, and let's say that the black rook is here, and the white bishop is let's say the white queen's on the board. And this could be other pieces on the board. The white queen goes here. Now, that's kind of weird, but I guess pieces can also fork other pieces. I believe this is a fork between the king and the rook. Normally, when you think of a fork, you think of a knight, and let's say white has a knight here, and it's white to move. White moves here, forking the rook and the knight. The rook is worth more than the knight, so that should be winning for black by winning a major piece over losing a minor one, which is another tactic. You always want to trade your minor pieces for rooks or the queen or whatever if you can do it. What else? Okay, so now you can also do what's called let's say that this knight was here and white had a bishop here and it was white to move. Now you can also do what's called a fork and a discovered check. Okay. Now the knight could move over here, creating the discovered check with the bishop to the king, and the knight also attacks the rook. Now the king moves, or the rook can get in the way, or whatever. Either way, the rook's gonna fall. Or you can do what's called a double check, where the knight moves. The knight also checks the king, leaving the discovered check here. So you have a double check. That's what I call a double check. Whenever you get into a double check, the king must move. And you can use that tactic as a strategy to try to mate your king. Let's say if well, yeah, the king's got to move. Let's say if white had let's see, white. Let's say if the king was, let's see if the knight was there, and now we've got this. Wait, we've got this. So now we know the king has to move. So we don't think about attacking or defending. We just know that two pieces causing a king to be in check forces the king to move. So the only square the king can safely move to in this position is right here. And let's see. Now, another strategy and tactic is to work with your queen and knight. The queen and knight work together very well. It is a well-known strategy over hundreds and whatever years of playing chess that that type of position is in the best interest of white to win. So we can actually, I'm actually seeing a mate here. So I don't know if you can see it, but there's a mate here. The queen. The queen is guarding the knight, preventing the knight from being attacked. And there's no safe squares for the king to move. Well, actually, yeah, there isn't, because that white square on the end is double attacked. So if white moves the bishop here, there's a check. White can't take. He can't go there because of the knight, and can't go there because of the queen, so that's a checkmate. So it is a good strategy to try to come up with positions where the queen and knight are working together to create a checkmate. Not necessarily win a piece. I've never seen many queen knight tactics that won pieces. I've only seen the queen knight tactics where the strategy was to checkmate the opponent's king. That. What else? Let me think. So we went over the skewers and all that kind of stuff. I don't really know like what else is out there, but I have this book, and all right, so there's one other thing that I'm going to go over. There's a type of chess game. There's a type of chess game. There's two types of chess games, and let's leave that out. Let's do a knight. Let's do two knights and a bishop. I'll put the bishop here. And let's put the white king. Let's say you get 3, 6, 9. Oops. All right. Here we have two knights and a bishop versus a king, queen, and a rook. I'm not going to go over this because normally you would think right up straight that white can win because white's got the queen. So if you look at the board, the total amount of material worth is 369 points for black and 9 points for white. So you've got to really wonder, can black hold out this game? I mean, I'd be fighting for my life, you know? Let's move this knight over here, just out of, put these pieces over here, okay? I'm going to show you a mating trick. Let's say this king is here. Let's say this queen is here. And that queen is the, wait, something like this. Wait just a second. Am I doing this right? I don't remember this. The end position is something like, isn't it like this? So you would try to check your king like if you was doing it with a rook and a king. Let's say you can't get the position. Okay, now watch what's happening. Watch what happens here. Wait, is this gonna work? The queen has to be... Let me move these off the board. Okay, so now in this position, the only place the king can move is here. So what you do is you work the king to the back of the board using this technique right here. Check. Moves. Check. Moves. Check. Moves. Check. Moves. Notice this diagonal, this is a square. There's a square, 3 by 3 square here. And you're moving the queen and the rook inside that square to force the king to the end of the board. That's the tactic. The strategy is using the rook and queen together to force the king into a checkmate. The tactics is how you do that, is you move you move the queen and the rook, you know, diagonally. The queen's diagonally protecting like that. You get the king into a certain position. Maybe, yeah, maybe what it is, it's just a, maybe it starts like this. And black has got no other move. Let's say. I don't like that move. If I do it this way, the king can come up and then white can checkmate the king. If I move the queen, it may turn into a stalemate. Let me see. That's a stalemate, okay? Because you've moved the queen into, you've used the tactic of the queen and the rook, but you did it in the wrong order. You've moved the wrong piece. You've moved the queen up. Now the king cannot go anywhere. You have to move the rook, it seems, so that the king can make a move, and then you do the check where the queen and the rook are protecting each other. Then the king goes back, and then you deliver the final checkmate. So that's a tactic and a strategy of checkmating. Um, Again, doing checkmates. There's a tactic and there's a strategy for that. You need to know how to checkmate, or you cannot win the game. And you don't want to get into stalemate. If you get into stalemate, it's a draw, nobody wins, nobody loses, that type of thing. I'm just going to check something really quick here. I want to see something. No, I realize I'm just starting to teach chess, and at some point I'm going to have, I may have some viewership and that sort of thing from a couple of places. I don't know yet. And, there's people out there that are doing their thing with chess, and I guess it's okay. But I don't know what's going on here. What the fuck? You wait just a minute. Trying to check something out here. Hmm. I'm actually just looking for my stream. I've been streaming for over an hour. Oh, there it is. Okay. It's there. But anyway, let me go back. Oh, shit. Wait. I don't want to do that, do I? I gotta do this. My birdie's funny. Let me. I gotta move this, don't I, now? Because it got moved. Wish we'd have some people, but we don't. I mean, I'm here to talk about chess, I'm not gonna stay here all night if there's nobody around. Doesn't matter that much. What else there's about tactics and strategies? See if there were questions. I could answer questions for new players. What did I want to do? We went over skewers, forks, pins. Those are tactics. Those are ideas that you want to have in your mind to try to win a piece. When you win material, it gives you an advantage so you can win the game. Most games are won by material advantage. Now, I actually play positional chess. I could be down a whole rook, or I could decide to, if I feel my position's losing, I may sacrifice everything right and left to get a position that allows a checkmate. And I've done it a few times. It can be done. In 5-minute games, I think it's better to try to play for material win because people are thinking tactics and they're thinking, how can I get a piece? How can I win a pawn? Is my opponent going to blunder a piece or blunder a pawn or that kind of thing? Positional chess doesn't allow the time to say, I'm going to attack this square with the intention of putting a knight there. And if I can get a knight there, I can win the game because I know the endgame rules. Um, there's that. I mean, most games are played trying to win material. When you think like a master and you play with the intent of becoming a master type player, you play positional chess with the idea that you want to take material off the board. I'm going to take this pawn happens to be sitting on this square, or it may end up on another square, which I can eventually take. But what I'm really doing is I'm pounding pieces on a square so that I can own a square on the board, not just to take your piece. I don't want to just take your piece off the board. I want to put my piece on that square where your piece was. So that's like adding insult to injury. And chess players, the good chess players know this. They will capitalize on it. They will gather up an army of pawns and whatever to defend that square with their literal lives. And when you've got somebody that's thinking 4 or 5, 6, 7 moves ahead, as well as 2 or 3 different variations, because that player is thinking, okay, if this player does this move, how can I counterattack, or what am I supposed to do? Okay, so what if this player does this move? How do I counterattack? What moves do I need to make? You are doing that for the 3 best possible solutions to the problem. And you're doing that every time your opponent moves, more or less. It's mind-bendingly, excruciatingly painful. I don't know how people can do it. I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. It's too much. My idea of playing chess is to play 5-minute games. Maybe meet a few people, you know. You're going to beat them. They're going to beat you. They're from different countries. And trying to have fun, I guess. You want to have some element of fun and laughter and that kind of thing in some games that you're playing. They do exist out there, but I'm so tired right now because I drove like 4 or 5 hours today earlier doing something. So I'm not teaching. So you want to be a good chess player. This is how you should play. I've gone over most of the basic tactics. You develop your strategy or your plan based on whether or not you can see a tactic happening or about to happen, or you're trying to force something and something's going to happen, and now all of a sudden you have a new strategy because a piece is pinned, or there's a skewer possibility, or that type of thing. I honestly can't think of anything else. So let's go into this book called Amateur's Mind, and I don't know. I've got some pages marked off. I don't know what this is. Rules of Space. So another strategy would be, rather than, okay, there's, like I was saying, there's positional chess and there's material chess. I could have all the materials on the board, but if I've got one move with two pieces and it checkmates your king, I won. That's positional chess. And the really good chess players, like me, play positional chess. We play for owning position and not material. I don't give a crap about material. As long as I keep as much of my material as I can, it doesn't matter if I have a better position than you do. If I can move my pieces better than you can, it doesn't matter if you got a queen stuck over on the side of the board and it can't do nothing, or if you have a knight on the side of the board that's not doing anything, then you may have material, but you don't have position because those pieces are not doing anything. They're not supporting anything. They're not supporting a square. They're not doing a bunch of things. When you're thinking like a grandmaster, you're looking at each piece on the board. What is that piece doing? What are the other pieces doing to complement the piece that you're thinking about? You have that situation. It's called situational awareness. And being in the military, I know all about this stuff. So then you think, okay, this is what's going on over there. Can I devise a strategy within the next 5 or 6 moves that puts so much pressure on my opponent that those pieces that are stuck over there on the other side of the board that are not doing anything are even going to look worse? There are 2 main ideas. There are also 2 other main ideas. There's positional and there's material. There's another idea in chess, and I will go over this right now, if I can. We just fill up every pawn here, and let's say that white has a black bishop, and what doesn't a black has a knight somewhere. Now, immediately looking at this position, white has a good bishop. Now, there are good bishops and there are bad bishops, okay? If I put another bishop on the board for white, white has a good bishop and white has a bad bishop. Cut it out. White's bad bishop is the light-colored bishop because it can't go anywhere. But that's not the reason. White also has a dark bishop, which also can't go anywhere, or else it's going to get attacked. It can't go anywhere. However, white's dark bishop is actually the good bishop because it can attack the opponent's pawns. So that's how you delineate between the good and the bad bishops. You look at this. You look at the board and you say, "Can my bishop attack most of my opponent's pawns?" If they can attack most of my opponent's pawns, then I have a good bishop. So you don't want to trade a good bishop for a bad bishop. Okay? You want to trade your bad bishop for your opponent's good bishop. If you have 2 bishops of the same color on each side of the board, it's going to lead into a draw. If you have opposite colored bishops on either side of the board, it could be a win. However, the side that's in the win must have the good bishop. If the side that wants to win is the bad bishop, then it could be a draw. So, now in this particular case, we have a knight on black side of the board, and not even looking at the board, black's position is better because it's closed. This is a closed position. However, black has a knight. Knights work best in closed positions. If these pawns weren't there or something, black could get a knight here, or black could get a knight, down in here, and attack. Let's say that pawn was there, and black had a knight here. He could take his knight, attack this pawn for free, because let's say if the white's king was way over here, and couldn't do anything. And this pawn attacks. This bishop goes here. That pawn goes there. This bishop goes here. Luckily, the pawn can't queen because the bishop can take it. But if there was another situation where the bishop, let's say the bishop was a light squared bishop or something, you know? What the fuck was this? Then you've got, you got the knight can get in behind enemy lines, whereas the bishop, I suppose the bishop could do, the bad bishop obviously can't get behind enemy lines, but if it was a good bishop, maybe it could do the same thing that the knight can do. It could attack that pawn, and then white can advance. So it seems like there's tactics for both sides. I just wanted to put it out there. But the other situation is that, let's see. Black can put a knight. I'm not seeing the position that I like here. Well, let's just put it there. So let's say that white has a bad bishop, okay? Now, when you're playing as black, your strategy is to get rid of white's good bishop. You don't want the good bishop attacking your pawns, which is the dark squared pawns. That's your strategy. You pull off tactics to get rid of that bishop. Maybe you trade the opponent's good bishop for your knight. And then you have your opponent's bad bishop against your good knight. And then you can literally say, I got a good knight, so good knight, right? So this position here allows the knight to move in such a way that it gets right here. Knights are the best pieces. Knights and bishops are the best pieces to do what's called blocking a pawn, to preventing a pawn from becoming a passed pawn, which is past the fourth rank, whatever. You block it with your knight. Knights are really good at doing this. Not only that, as you can see here, it's attacking the bishop and that pawn. So, like, white's got to go here to protect that pawn. I don't know, what else can black do here, I don't know. Maybe he could move the pawn or something. But still, white can't get in there. And, maybe black can work back and forth and try to get a king in here or something. I just wanted to show you the position where the knight was guarded by these two pawns. It's not a typical position, but something similar to that might be, let's see. Maybe something like that, or even you could have a knight over here. You would not see a knight back here. That's not a good position. What you would normally see is you would see a knight being protected by a pawn, and you would not see a knight over on the side of the board. Even the second rank or the second file over, you would not see a knight there either, most of the time. Most of the time, it's either in the third rank, third through fifth, or whatever the number is. That's a good position for a knight. That's okay. So, a strategy is using a knight to block a pawn. So in this case, maybe black didn't want the f pawn to advance, so he moved his knight here. He's prevented this pawn from causing any problems, and now black can go on about his business and do, whatever. So the other thing what they're talking about here on this game, they're showing a position. When you have more space, it is usually a good idea to avoid exchanges. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2, if you have less space, an exchange or two will give the rest of your pieces more room to move about. Rule number 3, a spatial plus is a permanent long-term advantage. You don't have to be in any hurry to utilize it. Take your time and let the opponent stew in his own juices. That was a rated 1700 game there. Let me see what else I've got. So that's why I marked that, because that's... So you've got development and initiative. I just lost a fucking piece of paper down there. There's tempo, there's, exchanging. There's exchanging pieces. So let's say if you have, let's say there's a bishop here. And white wants to do some stupid shit or whatever. White's bishop's a bad bishop. Well, it's a good bishop in this case. You wouldn't trade, But every time, if you notice, every time your opponent takes a piece, what happens is, number 1, it allows you to advance and move a piece. It does give you tempo, which basically gives you the chance to advance, move a piece. He's done that. You've advanced this pawn, or if there should happen to be another knight on the board, and white decides to trade off the good bishop, black's saying, well, sure, go ahead. Now black has his piece on a dark square, and the light squared bishop can never touch the knight there because it's on a dark square. So that's a positional advantage, and technically even a material advantage for black. Well, technically it's not a material advantage because both the bishop and the knight are worth the same amount of points. Personally, I like bishops better than knights. I hate knights. I just can't do anything with fucking things. So yeah, there's a whole section on material. Talks about rules of space there. Rules of the center. Okay, here, this book is by International Master Jeremy Silman. Now, he does say, which is kind of my thinking, bishops really are better than knights in a pawn race situations. It was demonstrated to Kaplan, and then in 1850 found out also. Don't let it happen to you. Because bishops can obviously take more, control of the board. Now, here's another thing. You don't want to advance your pawns too early. Acquisition of the center, territory, and space. Every chess player is attracted to beautiful combinations and razor-sharp kingside tactics. This attraction makes us want to emulate the great attacking masters, and as a result, we study games by Kasparov, Alekhine, and Tal. Though this ability to calculate is invaluable, and at least a basic understanding of the mechanics of attack is imperative, the positional elements of chess tend to be ignored by the legions of amateurs that love the game. Why? Do amateur players think that subjects such as territory and center are boring? Or could it be that literature on this subject simply presents information in a dull manner? Whatever the reason for this relative ignorance might be, most amateurs don't have a clue about the proper use of space advantage or a full pawn center. Instead, they constantly look for forcing continuations, which, yeah, I do look for forcing, aimed at the enemy king, and once they give themselves a green light, they will start a completely unjustified attack, or even worse, just to tight and do nothing at all. Personally, I like nothing more than to create a large pawn center and squeeze my opponent to death in its space-gaining coils. After the game, the poor victim often has a glazed look in his eyes. He knows he lost badly, but is not quite sure why. There are 3 areas of the chessboard: kingside, center, and queenside. Center is by far the most important. Unfortunately, most amateurs seem to have wing vision. Yeah, I like to do my attacks on the queen side. The following rules concerning play in the center and on the wings may prove beneficial. A full pawn center gives its own owner territory and control over key central squares. Rule number 2. Owning a full pawn center is a responsibility. Once you create it, you must strive to make it indestructible. You achieve this goal, then your center will cramp. If you achieve this goal, then your center will cramp and restrict your opponent for the rest of the game. Don't advance the center too early. Every pawn move leaves weak squares in its wake. Here's an example of a strong pawn center. So here the knight's blocked. Advancing the e-pawn weakens both d5 and f5. Notice how the black knight cannot advance because of the white center. Even after such a knight would still be unable to find an advanced central post. However, if white were to advance the center e4 to e5, then the d4 and d5 f5 squares are suddenly available to the tormented horse. So in other words, if this guy moves here, then the knight can either go there or over there, type of thing. If your opponent has created a full pawn center, you must strive to attack it. This creates a battle of philosophies. He is telling you it is strong. You are telling him that it's a target. One of the most common cases of allowing a strong center in order to attack it comes about in the Alekhines defense. Now, there's some terminology that I forgot, and I don't remember exactly what it is, okay? There's a pawn structure, and you have 3 pawns. You have your base pawn, your support pawn, and your attacking pawn, whatever. The most important pawn that you would think is in this structure is the one at the bottom because it supports all the others, but that is not the case. The most important pawn is this one in the middle, right here. I don't understand all the reasonings behind it, but that's the pawn that you want to protect. If you got a knight down here, you can protect them both. But if you got a bishop, you'd want to be protecting that pawn right there. Let's see if we can do this Alekhines defense. So we got e4. And I also have some games put up over here. I don't play Alekhines defense, by the way. Daring the pawn to advance. So this is talking about your pawn center structure and that sort of thing. Now we've got d4, d6, d6, c4. White grabs all the central space he can, decaptures E. Now I'm running the moves from the book. I'm not looking at the moves in the game on that list. Black plays knight to c6. Jesus Christ, that scared the fuck out of me. What the fuck here? D captures e5, F captures e5. Now knight to d6. c6. Developing and hitting d4. Black white plays bishop to e3. The immediate knight f3 would have allowed black to intensify the pressure with bishop to g4. So if I go cancel move, and then I try to do Isa, wait. I'm not able to do variations here. I don't know why. This is a newer Fritz, and I haven't played with this. I want to do a variation. See, all I'm doing something. I'm doing openings book. I'm not doing notation or something. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. What am I doing? Wait a minute. Let me back this. I don't know how to do this. I have to learn. I don't know where to back up the game here. All I have is cancel move. Fuck it anyway, I don't know. It says if knight f3, black plays bishop to g4. I'll just go back to that was played by, so this is bishop at e3 is a better move. It says 70%, like more games, 86 games versus 7 have played this other move. So there's a total of 6 games here. And I don't see white won 50% of the time. I don't know what that continuation would be. And I can't go, I'm not going into that aspect yet. That's more advanced. So there's bishop e3. Black wants to play e6, but he doesn't want to block in his light squared bishop. That's this guy. He wants to play this guy, but he doesn't want to block that bishop in. Knight to c3, c6, knight f3, bishop e7. See how whites get the open dark bishop? That's a common move for black to play here. And then with the knight, but that pawn's advanced, so it's a bit of an issue there. Castling early in the game. Striking at e5 and forcing white to trade off his most cramping pawn. Why exactly does that force anything? If white just leaves it there, then white's got an isolated pawn. White probably doesn't want an isolated pawn. And 29 moves, where 29 games have played with this. And we've got bishop captures. Black's looking pretty good. Black training his sights on the d4 pawn. White claims this pawn is strong. Black claims that it's weak. So we're talking about, alright, so here's where we get defenders and attackers. So we've got, what was the last move? It's white to move. If black wanted to attack the pawn, he'd have to have like another knight on it or something. White has 2 pieces on the pawn. Black's got 2 pieces attacking. Nothing's going to happen. Now white can push the d pawn and force an exchange, or making the knight to move, which is moving the piece twice, which is not good for black. White plays queen to d2. Maybe putting a rook behind and threatening to advance the pawn. Preparing to bring the rook to d1 and give d4 more support. Queen to e7. Preparing to place more pressure against d4 via a rook from a to d8. Rook from a1 to rook a1 to d1, d8. And rook from a to d8. With white is doing everything he can to defend the center. Black is doing everything he can to attack it. If the center pawns get traded, then open files exist that make it easy to get one's rooks into play. And there's a variation of the Caro-Kann defense where the c pawn is exchanged, leaving black's c file open. Supposedly that's done early on in the game. Then they're showing another game here. e4, e6, d4, d5. E captures, blah, blah. It doesn't take a genius to see that the open e file will be a nice place to stick a rook, following the rule that rooks belong on open files. Rule number 6, if the center becomes locked, then the play switches to the wings. And it goes through another game here. It's easy to see that the center is a dead zone. All the play will have to take place on the sides of the board. With a closed center, I guess that's the end of that. With a closed center, you know which wing to play on by noting the direction that your pawns point. The pawns point to the area where you have more space, and that is the side you want to control. Maybe white's pawns have more space on the queen side. And also, looking at this position, it looks like black has an isolated pawn. In general, you want to push the pawn that stands next to your most advanced pawn. Rule number 8. A wide open center allows you to attack with pieces. A closed center generally means that you must attack with pawns. So there's some variations in there, and I can't go over them because I don't know. I don't have it set up for variations. Now, I don't, let's see, can I cancel? I can cancel all the moves that were shown in the book. And we can look at the opening play. So most openings are C5. There's E5, and there's some, it goes down the list here. So we're going to see if most openings are following this normal pattern. Now here, instead of, wait, D6, here it says knight F3. Most games played with knight F3 on the fourth move. Shit. Did I move my rules of space? I lost rules of this. I lost where I was at, damn it. Fuck. Oh, god damn it. Where the hell did I put that? 2. There's a whole subject on pawn structure. My bird agrees with me. I don't remember where the fuck I was. Oh, it could be this one here. Wait. Shit. I forgot where the hell I was. I'm very tired. Isn't it this game? Yeah, I think it's right here. So most moves are played, like 3 times as many moves are played with knight F4, knight F3 on the 4th move. Whereas here white plays C4. And there's no mention of knight to F3. So with the C4 line, then oh, there's a variation. I don't even know how the hell I got there. Now that's odd because it's black is giving up an isolated pawn. Why would black? You see, what happens is when black pushed the f pawn, it left the e pawn weak and isolated. So whatever the tactics are there, that gets way more than involved than what I want to get into. Um, and I don't even know what relevance there's. Both sides have pretty much equal amount of space. So that just goes into the center. I mean, this book right here, The Amateur's Mind, is about almost 2 inches thick, and it goes into a lot of other things. It talks about material advantage. It talks about position. It talks about your pawn structure. Um, Battle between bishop and knights. There's a game. So what happens in this book is he's teaching, he's trying to get players that are low rated to, like this is a 1,000 rated player, and he's talking about moves. He's trying to get the 1,000 rated player to talk about his moves. See, it talks about due to state imbalances, white will use the Steinitz rule to make knights ineffective by taking away their advanced support points. Stuff like that. That's very advanced. Shut up! Fucker. No. Alright. Somebody wants to get a little bath time, don't they? Where are you? Told you, I said no. What else is in this book? There's got to be something in here I can go over. Development and initiative. I wonder if there's something in there. Development. Rule number 1. A lead in development usually means that you must start some sort of aggressive act. Quiet play puts no pressure on the opponent and will allow him to get the rest of his forces out. A lead in development means the most open positions because the open central file should enable your army to penetrate into the hostile position with relative ease. If you have more pieces out and the position is wide open, or even partly open, then don't hesitate to attack. I don't play the Sicilian defense, but we will just, let's see. Wait a minute, how many, where's C5? So most of the openings are C5. I don't play it because there's way too many variations and trust me, you don't want to. You don't even want to go there. Really, don't win the Sicilian. That's just very. It's not good for your health. Knight f3, d6, bishop f5 check. Now you can see there, d4 is a more popular, but we're going to go by the numbers that are in the book here. The line remains popular at all levels of competition. Yeah, I'm sure. Now we've got bd7. Bishop captures. Queen captures. Now we've got c4. Black can win a pawn with a greedy but overly risky queen to g4. Someone actually played queen to g4 right here. However, this move, which does give black static material edge, allows white to build up an enormous advantage in development. Let's see if the book matches this game. So white castles. Queen captures e4 and d4. This might even be the same game for all we know. White opens up as many lines as possible. These open files should be looked upon as highways into the hostile position. You got diagonals. You got the rook could come out here and attack the queen. I mean, really, white can put pressure, and the queen is out there in the open. That's another rule. I never play that queen early in the game, even if it leads to. Now here we're talking. Okay, so black's got a pawn. He's a pawn up, but black's position is such that black has a queen out in the middle of the board, and that thing's going to get harassed right and left. Now here, queen c6 was played. Then we've got knight captures d4. Queen captures c4 is a questionable move. White to play and attack like mad. So what could white do here? Black's last two moves gave him a 2-pawn advantage. However, few things in life are free, and the suicidal capture gives white more development and more open lines. If you are the defender in such positions, remember that it is rarely a good idea to open lines if your king is still in the center. White plays knight to a3, which looks like it's even this game or something. From this point on, white will play with threats and never allow his opponent to bring his lazy troops out. Queen to c8. It looks like it's the same game here. Knight from a to b5. There's a line there, but it stops here. Let me see. Knight from a to b5. Threatening knight captures d6. Because the pawn is protecting that is pinned. So we were talking about those pins earlier. So is that really defended? The answer is no, it's not, because it can't move. The king could move out of the way, then it would be defended, but I don't think it's a good idea. So now you can see, look at all the open space here that white has. Black is totally constricted here. This is madness. Black plays queen to d7. White answers the obvious e6 with knight to f5. How is e6 knight to f5? Oh, because that pawn is still pinned. So now white has 3 pieces on that. The engine's suggesting queen to d7. That's one of my favorite moves. Renewing the threat against d6. Now, bishop captures. It's time to crack open the black king. White is playing for complete Armageddon, and as a result, normal material and positional considerations no longer exist. Rook captures. Rook to d5. That's odd. So why can't black just take the rook? Oh, because that would be a royal fork. So I read where people are saying the royal fork is a check between the king and the queen, but I disagree with that. A royal fork, and I actually had this in one of my games, is a check with the king, queen, and rook. So if the black queen takes the rook, the knight can come down. This white knight can come down and check both the king, the queen, and the rook. That's a royal fork. Oh, fuck, what did I just do? There's a move. Oh, alright, so black is not given a moment's rest. Queen goes to c8. Taking on d5 was not possible due to knight c7 check. Yeah, we saw that. Knight to f5. Another fork is threatened on d6. King to f8. Knight captures e7. King captures e7. Mate follows. If knight captures on e7, there's a checkmate. Because now you're looking at the square d8. d8 is attacked 2 times. and it's only defended once. So if knight captures, that's check there. Rook to d8 check. I don't know, I guess there's a mate in there somewhere. So after king captures, then you've got rook to e5 check. 1-0. Black has taken enough punishment. King to f8, queen to d6 check does not paint a pretty picture for the second player. Queen to d6. Oh, here. Knight to e7. Queen captures e7 check. King to g8. That's forced, isn't it? Yeah, it's forced mate. Queen captures. Rook captures.
Mate.
Holy shit, fuck, you scared the shit out of me. If the enemy king is still in the center and you have a lead in development, consider these factors an invitation to rip the opponent's head off. See what I'm talking about, bloodlust in this game? I'm telling you. Start an immediate attack. At the very least, you will keep his king stuck in the middle and make him suffer for a long time to come. Rule number 4, a closed position often nullifies a lead in development because of blocked files. That's probably another game of some sort. A common opening that leads to a closed center. It looks like another Sicilian line of some sort. I don't know what that was. Was that a Sicilian? It probably was. So now we've got d4, knight f6, c4, c5. So this is like a transpositional Sicilian defense type of thing, maybe. I don't know. Now, see, this is leading towards well, no, the French. Yeah, it's leading towards a French. d5, e5. What the fuck? What? That's what it says. So in that position, black's d6 pawn's weak. So white already has a plan now. Attack that backwards pawn. Bishop to e7. This line is known as the Chuck Benoni. Bishop d3. That's horrible for white. Look at that bishop just sitting out there. Black castle. Knight from g to e2. Knight to e8. Black allows himself to fall behind development because he knows that white's pieces cannot get to him due to the traffic jam in the middle. After 8 white castles, black shows that he's willing to lose even more time by bishop to g5, trading off his bad bishop for white's good one. So this is what the book says. So let's see what happens here. So white castles. Black plays bishop to g5. Now, remember we were talking about terminologies of bishops, okay? I'm not looking at the book right now. White's good bishop is the dark one. Black's good bishop is the white one. Now, what does it say here? Black shows he is willing to lose even more time, trading off his bad bishop for white's good one. Now, this is incorrect. This is totally incorrect. And this is in a book by an international master, okay? I'm not saying that the guy is lying, okay? Where is the bishop trade? I don't even see where the... Oh, wait, did I make a wrong move? Black shows disdain for development instead accomplishes a good strategic goal, securing nods that he can catch up in development. So here's Jeremy Silman, international master, saying that black moved bishop to g5, which is what I did. Wait, that's bishop to g4. We want bishop to g5 here. Oh, I moved the light squared bishop. Aha. Aha. Okay. Now, see, I made a mistake. So that's why I was questioning it. Now, all right. Now we do have the correct bishop to g5. Okay. So now the bishop is attacking. All right. It says black trading off his bad bishop for white's good one. So white's good bishop, which is this dark one, is definitely white's good bishop because it's attacking the dark squared pawns. So that's the point that I wanted to make, and it's even right here in this book. So there you go. So they're talking about closed center development, try to develop your pieces. Why they talk about these openings. And I'll show you a game that I typically play, but I gotta reverse the board somehow. Board flip. All right. Here's a game. Well, we play d4. I'll show you this. You got this. We got c6. Well, I don't want to play c6. I want to play... e6 is played a lot. No, what about knight c6? I don't fucking know. Now, normally I play this bishop here. c5 is questionable. Knight f6. e3. Now, there's knight. I'm going to show you. Let's say if black, for example, I don't really know what he's going to do, but let's say if I play here, black tries to fianchetto this bishop. When black plays this move, okay, I have read where the masters are saying the best move is for white to play bishop to e2, not to play bishop to d3. And also look at black's pawn structure here. Black has all the pawns on the light colored squares. So what this means is that this bishop that I have out here, this dark squared bishop, this needs to be traded for maybe the dark squared bishop. Okay, so whose move is it here? So I could actually even go here. I don't really want a castle, but we'll just do it anyway. I wanted to show you something. I'm just making really weird moves here. See that it's everything's deconstructed here. But what I wanted to show you is like, white is advancing. This is my favorite game. It's not my typical game because I don't quite play like this, but it's very close. And the idea is that I'm playing with the idea of castling on the king side and making a queen side attack. Most of the higher rated players will play instead something like they'll move the knight back, maybe even trade this. Holy fucking shit, that scared the fuck out of me. What the hell did I fucking do? Well, there's that, which I didn't see, but fuck, what are you gonna do, Is that, yeah, there's F4. So, white could attempt to do a kingside pawn storm. And the knight is not on the particular guarding square, which is 3 squares out right there on that space. And because of the fianchettoed bishop, there's this attack line. The idea is, I don't know, I'm just gonna make stupid ass fucking moves. The idea is to play that H pawn, I would just say black is really stupid, and then makes this capture. What the fuck? Oh, here we go. So you've got this. And then say, we get that, and we get maybe this. And say we get that. Yeah, black's trying to do some stupid shit. I mean, you get the idea. Like the rook is on the open file. The bishop's gonna come back. Wait, is it white's move? Yeah, fuck you. Now I've seen games where the rook will sack. That takes. Then you've got a queen here. You could block. Most of the time it just goes back in a corner. But I don't know what the attack is. I have no idea what the strategy is getting into that fianchettoed bishop area, but I was just showing the idea of attacking on the queen side. There are other games. There's I play what's called London System. It's so easy to learn. And the Catalan, I think it is, or something. I don't fucking know. So this is the London. Maybe something like that. Something like that. Knight comes out. I always play the H pawn because I don't want to lose my bishop. Now see, the bishop is left behind because you don't know if black wants to fianchetto his bishop. So this knight comes out. Let's say this. So now we know what's happening. I've always wanted to play this knight over to this square. We still don't know yet what's happening here. Let's see if we get a fianchettoed bishop. Then we know this knight's got to come out to here. Oh, what the fuck? Wait a minute. See, I don't know what black's plans are and shit. But white's plan is wants to be to open up the side of the board. Because see how I got the light bishops hanging out over here. You've got all this open space. Push these pawns. Move the queen up here. Maybe move the queen behind the pawns. Get the rooks lined up on that outside file. There's a bunch of stuff going on that's easy, you know, easy to figure out. That's the basics of tactics and thinking like a master, talking about strategy. A basic idea of closed and open positions, not really the best. Understanding your bad bishop and your good bishop, that's one of the most important things. Knowing that knights are good in closed positions, bishops are good in open positions. So if you get a whole bunch of pawns on the board, keep your knights. If all the pawns are disappearing off the board, keep your bishops, that sort of thing. I try to play, if you look at this position here, most of my pawns are on dark colored squares. So I purposely keep my light squared bishop behind, and my dark squared bishop is out here, ready to trade, and so on and so forth. That's the whole reason for my play, is because I'm already thinking endgame. And it's so easy to learn. It's like right there. And now all I got to do is just learn variations as to what's happening so that I can get rid of this dark bishop, open up a line somewhere where I can get the light bishop attacking those light colored pawns. You know, like moving it advanced. Like I'd be doing this kind of shit, man. You know? Now what if black was to take, right? My best move here might be, now I've got to reposition shit. I can't really go there because I'd be attacked by the knight. I could go here. Oh, what the fuck? Black could attempt to go here. And if I take, and then this guy comes down, I think that's better for white. Because then now, see, I can move that knight back here and re-attack this pawn. But then this guy can come up here, which is still in my favor. Because you can see they're all on light-colored squares, and I'm using my bishop to actually block. So I could actually play here. Now white's knight is out of position there. The black bishop, you know, black's pieces are constricted here. I've got open space over here. Now another thing is, like, say this knight wants to go to that square, and this knight's on a 3x3 square, and it's going to take me half a dozen moves to try to protect that square. I could probably push a3. The other thing is, you want to keep your pawns as close to home as possible. If you outstretch your pawns too much, it's going to be a problem. I don't know what else to do here. But I'm definitely tired. But I think I went over a lot of good stuff. I think the most important thing in learning how to play is get a basic idea of your openings. Like I said, I was just playing that London system there. Know your openings. Know why you're playing your openings, okay? If you play an opening like this, and black just does stupid shit, right? All the beginners play this opening. And the really noobs players, they don't see it, you know? They'll try to open up the outside pawns and bring their rooks out early, and the next thing you know, bam, there's a checkmate here. Another really cool mate is if black decides to play, let's say, this pawn. Oh my fucking god. White plays the king pawn. And then black plays, let's say, that pawn. No, there's a better move. The fuck? There's a mate right there.
Mate.
That's a cool mate right there. I've actually played that in a game. And then with the bishop, there's uh shit. There's this. Fuck. There's this. And there's also, instead of playing the queen to F, which is actually a better move, new players will play the queen all the way out to here, making it even more. And what's another thing that's interesting is that moving this knight right here doesn't stop the mate.
Mate.
That's called the scholar's mate, I think. But anyway, um, I don't play. This is an e-pawn opening. When you play the king pawn, the pawn that's in front of the king, it's an e-pawn opening, and black plays c5 and fucking Sicilian dragon and all that other happy horse shit. I played d4, and that's usually d4. I played a bishop out like I was showing you earlier, you know. And there's some other things. There's some other stuff you can do. You know, you could keep doing this. Um, you know, I don't know why that pawn's sitting there. It's just crazy shit. But you can see all my dark pawns, you know. It's pretty obvious that I've got a bad bishop here. Maybe I should learn my opening such that I don't leave that bad bishop looking so bad at the beginning. Oh, I can't think what else is there. There's it's more like you got to learn your pawn structure, you got to learn uh how to mate your king, you got to learn your skewers, your forks. And now it's like, you know, you got to do all this within a space of 5 or 10 minutes, and you're playing against time and everything. Um, a real chess game is played over the board. It's not played on a computer, and it takes hours. A 90-minute game is like fucking, well, it's 45 minutes aside or something. I mean, an hour and a half sitting there staring at a chessboard. Or now just streaming here for 3 hours looking at the screen. Um, these are reasons why I suggest you not to learn this game. Just forget playing chess. Now with COVID and everything, everything's gone to computer. It's going to be so much worse. Magnus Carlsen was playing a game just recently, and he moved his queen, and he had a mouse slip, and he lost his queen and lost a major game. And we're talking some money, you know, literally could be thousands of dollars in the game. And it's all because of a mouse slip on a computer. I mean, you know. So there's other video games out there, and there's other games, there's other things in life to do. I cannot openly suggest playing chess, but there are people that like to play it. I am willing to be here for those people that are interested in learning the aspects of what it takes to become a master in chess. I am more instructing on you should learn how to play chess from a level of you're going to lose, okay? You can do tons and tons of puzzles. You can do 3 minute games. You can do bullet, lightning, all the fast games. The 5 minute games, 5 and 0, are the best games to play to learn your opening. Get your idea for how you want to learn your openings. If you want to learn Sicilian and dozens of variations of how to play it, including some of the transpositions in there, by all means, that's your bag. You know, I don't teach that. I teach systems for beginner to intermediate players, and I may go into those openings and study those variations. Um, Outside of that, there's reasons for the variations. So then I would go into how to play bishop and bishop endgames, bishop versus knight or bishop versus bishop. Same colored bishop, opposite colored bishop. There's those are endgames, and you need to know those. I need to know those if I want to continue and win my opening. This is my opening. This is my baby. So in order for my baby to work, I need to know the end game and what is it that I'm trying to do. I am trying to pass a pawn to make a queen and win the game that way. I'm not looking for the checkmate up front. Grandmasters, when they play, they don't look for checkmates. They look for how to win a pawn and how to pass that pawn, how to get that pawn that they've won and convert it into a queen. That is thinking like a serious grandmaster and playing chess over the board for hours on end and learning patterns and variations to make that goal come true. Um, I have got a lot of reading material. I've got a Fritz database. As you can see, I've been working here. I've got some information somewhere. I don't know where it is. I'm hoping I can find it and talk about my opening play and that sort of thing. Outside of that, I think I'm done for the night.